The desert wind carried sand across the rocky outcrop where Chief Petty Officer Marcus Ghost Riley lay motionless for the past 6 hours. His ghillie suit blended perfectly with the brown and tan landscape of the Afghan mountains. Through his scope, he watched the compound below where intelligence suggested a high-value target was hiding. Marcus had earned his nickname Ghost not just for his ability to disappear into any environment, but for the way he seemed to vanish from enemy sights just when they thought they had him cornered. At 32 years old, he had served 8 tours across Iraq and Afghanistan. His reputation as one of the Navy's deadliest snipers was built on precision, patience, and an almost supernatural ability to read the battlefield. The mission briefing had been clear. Rahman Hassan, a bomb maker responsible for over 24 coalition deaths, was holed up in the compound. The target had evaded capture for 3 years, always staying one step ahead of military operations. This time was different. This time, they had solid intelligence on his location. Marcus adjusted his position slightly, feeling the familiar weight of his 13 Malawian Quachas Mod 7 sniper rifle. The weapon was an extension of himself, customized to his exact specifications over years of combat. Every scratch on the stock told a story. Every adjustment to the scope represented lessons learned in blood and sand. His spotter, Petty Officer 2nd Class Jake Eagle Morrison, lay beside him with his own set of optics. Eagle was 26, on his 4th deployment, and had been Marcus's spotter for the past 18 months. The two men worked together like a single organism, communicating with hand signals and shared glances that spoke volumes. Movement, 2 o'clock, Eagle whispered through their comm system. Marcus shifted his scope to the indicated position. A figure emerged from the main building of the compound. Even at 800 meters, Marcus could see the man matched the physical description of their target. Average height, thick beard, wearing traditional Afghan clothing with a distinctive scar along his left cheek. Positive identification, Marcus breathed into his microphone. The voice of Lieutenant Commander Sarachin crackled through their earpieces from the Tactical Operations Center 5 miles away. Ghost, Eagle, you are cleared to observe and report. Do not engage without direct authorization. Marcus frowned. The original mission parameters had included authorization to engage on positive identification. Something had changed. He could feel it in the tone of Commander Chen's voice, in the unusual delay between target acquisition and engagement clearance. Copy that, Command. Maintaining observation, Marcus replied, though every instinct told him to take the shot while he had it. Rahman Hassan moved across the compound's courtyard with purpose. Marcus tracked him through the scope, noting the man's confident stride. This wasn't someone who felt hunted. Hassan stopped at a well in the center of the courtyard and began drawing water, completely exposed. Perfect shot, Eagle murmured. Winds calm, target stationary. Range 805 meters. Marcus had made more difficult shots under worse conditions. The crosshairs settled naturally on Hassan's center mass. His breathing slowed to the meditative rhythm he'd perfected over thousands of hours of training. His finger rested lightly on the trigger, applying just enough pressure to take up the slack. But the order to fire didn't come. Command, request permission to engage. Target is exposed and stationary. Negative, Ghost. Hold your position. We're waiting for final confirmation from higher up. Higher up. That meant politicians were involved. Marcus had seen this before. Perfect shots missed because someone in Washington wanted to double-check intelligence, wanted to make sure the political fallout would be minimal. While they debated, good soldiers died. Hassan finished at the well and began walking toward a smaller building at the back of the compound. In 30 seconds, he would be out of sight. The next opportunity might not come for hours, or at all. Ghost, targets moving to secondary building. We're going to lose him, Eagle reported. I see it, Marcus replied, his scope following Hassan's movement. Command, target is about to go out of sight. Request immediate clearance to engage. Static filled their earpieces for several seconds before Commander Chen's voice returned. Ghost, you are to hold position and maintain observation only. Do not engage.
Marcus watched Rahman Hassan reach the doorway of the smaller building.
In 5 more steps, the bomb maker would disappear inside, potentially for hours. The man who had killed 24 coalition soldiers and countless Afghan civilians would slip away again because of political hesitation.
"Ghost," Eagle said quietly, "we're going to lose him." Marcus knew his spotter was right.
He also knew the chain of command existed for good reasons. Rules of engagement weren't suggestions, they were orders that kept operations coordinated and prevented friendly fire incidents. But those rules had been written by people who had never watched a target escape while waiting for permission to do their job.
Hassan was at the doorway now.
Marcus could see him clearly through his scope, could see the man's hands that had built the bombs that tore apart convoy trucks and market squares. His finger tightened on the trigger, muscle memory from thousands of hours of training taking over. The radio crackled again.
All units, this is command. We have reports of friendly forces in the target area. Do not engage until we can confirm their position." Friendly forces. That changed everything.
Marcus immediately began scanning the area around the compound with his scope, looking for any sign of coalition troops.
If friendlies were in the area and he hadn't been informed, it represented a massive breakdown in communication that could get people killed. "Eagle, you see anything?" "Negative. No movement except our target." Hassan disappeared inside the building.
Marcus felt his jaw clench. 3 years of hunting this man, perfect conditions, and they'd lost him again because of some possible friendly forces that nobody could actually locate.
He'd seen this movie before. By the time headquarters sorted out their confusion, Hassan would be gone. "Command, Ghost requesting permission to reposition for better observation of the secondary building." "Negative, Ghost. Maintain current position. We're sending a drone for additional surveillance." "A drone?" Marcus almost laughed.
By the time they got a drone overhead and sorted out the friendly forces' confusion, Hassan would be long gone. The bomb maker had survived this long by being smart enough to never stay in one place for too long.
Eagle was studying the compound through his own optics. Movement on the south side. Looks like vehicles approaching.
Marcus swung his scope toward the south. 2 pickup trucks were driving toward the compound, dust trails marking their approach. Even at distance, he could see armed men in the truck beds. "Command, we have vehicles approaching the target location from the south.
Multiple armed individuals visible." "Copy that, Ghost. Continue observation."
The trucks reached the compound and men began piling out. Marcus counted at least 8 fighters, all carrying AK-47s.
This wasn't a casual visit.
Either Hassan was being extracted, or reinforcements were arriving for some other purpose. "This is getting complicated," Eagle observed. Marcus tracked the new arrivals as they moved through the compound.
2 of them went directly to the building where Hassan had disappeared.
The others took up defensive positions around the perimeter. Whatever was happening, they were preparing for trouble.
"Command, target location is being reinforced. Count 8 additional hostile forces now in position around the compound." "Understood, Ghost. Continue observation and report any changes."
The radio went silent again.
Marcus could feel Eagle's frustration matching his own.
They were professional soldiers being asked to watch while their target potentially escaped again. Every minute that passed made the situation more complicated and dangerous. One of Hassan's men climbed onto the roof of the main building and began setting up what looked like a heavy machine gun. Another took position behind a stone wall with a clear view of the approaches to the compound. They were setting up for a fight.
"Command, hostiles are establishing defensive positions. Recommend immediate action before target location becomes hardened." "Ghost, continue observation. Do not engage without direct orders." Marcus felt his patience wearing thin. He'd spent years perfecting his craft, had saved countless lives by eliminating threats before they could act.
Now he was being asked to watch while those same threats prepared to either escape or turn the compound into a fortress.
Hassan reappeared from the building, now wearing different clothes and carrying a backpack. He moved quickly toward one of the trucks, clearly preparing to leave. Command, target is preparing to depart. Request immediate clearance to engage. Silence on the radio. Command, do you copy? Target is preparing to depart. More silence. Marcus watched Hassan throw his backpack into the truck. In 30 seconds, the bomb maker would be driving away, potentially forever. Marcus had one shot at 800 meters with a slight crosswind. Difficult, but well within his capabilities. His finger found the trigger again. The crosshairs settled on Hassan's chest as the man prepared to climb into the truck. Perfect shot. Clean background. No civilians in the line of fire. Ghost, Eagle whispered, "Command isn't responding."
Marcus knew his spotter was telling him something important without saying it directly.
Their communication with headquarters had been cut off, either by equipment failure or enemy jamming. Technically, that meant his original rules of engagement were still in effect. He had authorization to engage on positive target identification, which he'd achieved an hour ago. Hassan put one foot on the truck's running board.
The radio suddenly exploded with static, then, a voice Marcus didn't recognize came through clearly. "Ghost, this is Colonel Mitchell. You will not engage that target.
Stand down immediately." Colonel Mitchell. Marcus knew the name from briefings.
Mitchell was a political officer, someone who measured success in headlines rather than enemy casualties. The kind of man who would rather let a target escape than risk a negative news story.
"Sir, target is departing. This may be our only opportunity."
"I said stand down, Chief."
"That is a direct order." Hassan was in the truck now.
The engine started, and dust began kicking up from the wheels. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Not fear, but the kind of crystalline clarity that came in the moments before everything changed forever. He'd been a Navy SEAL for 12 years. He'd followed orders that sent him into hell and brought him back out again. He'd trusted the chain of command with his life and the lives of his teammates. But he'd also sworn an oath to protect innocent people from the kind of evil that Rahman Hassan represented.
24 coalition soldiers. Hundreds of civilians.
All dead because of bombs built by the man who was about to drive away. "Ghost," Colonel Mitchell's voice came through the radio again, "acknowledge your orders immediately." The truck began moving toward the compound's exit. In 60 seconds, Hassan would be on the open road where a shot would be impossible. In 5 minutes, he'd be lost in the maze of mountain roads and villages where he could disappear for months.
Marcus made his choice.
"Eagle," he whispered, "wind call."
His spotter didn't hesitate. Wind light and variable, favoring left.
Range 820 meters and closing. The truck was picking up speed now, bouncing slightly on the rough ground.
Marcus tracked it through his scope, calculating lead time and drop.
A moving target at 800 meters was exponentially more difficult than a stationary one, but he'd made similar shots before. "Ghost, this is Colonel Mitchell. Respond immediately or face court-martial." Marcus heard the words, but they seemed to come from very far away. His world had narrowed to the view through his scope, to the rhythm of his breathing, to the feel of the trigger under his finger. The truck hit a bump and Hassan's window came into perfect view for just a moment.
Marcus stopped breathing.
The crosshairs settled. His fingers squeezed the trigger with the same smooth motion he'd practiced 10,000 times. The rifle bucked against his shoulder. The .300 Winchester Magnum round left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second, covering the distance to target in less than 1 second. Through his scope, Marcus saw the truck's windshield spider web. The vehicle swerved hard to the left, then rolled twice before coming to rest against a boulder. "Target down," Eagle confirmed quietly. The radio erupted in angry voices, but Marcus was already moving.
"Pack it up. We're leaving."
He and Eagle had their gear broken down and secured in under 3 minutes. They began moving toward their extraction point, 2 miles away through rough mountain terrain. Marcus knew they had maybe an hour before enemy reinforcements arrived in force. As they moved through the rocks and sparse vegetation, Marcus's radio crackled with multiple voices demanding explanations, threatening consequences, asking for status reports.
He switched it off.
Eagle looked at him as they paused behind a boulder to check their route.
You know what this means? Marcus nodded. He just disobeyed a direct order from a superior officer in a combat zone.
In the best-case scenario, he'd face court-martial and dismissal from the Navy. In the worst case, he could face prison time. But Rahman Hassan was dead. The bomb maker who had killed 24 coalition soldiers would never build another IED. Sometimes the choice between following orders and doing what was right wasn't really a choice at all. They continued moving toward the extraction point, knowing that their war was far from over. The extraction helicopter touched down in a cloud of dust and rotor wash exactly 43 minutes after Marcus had taken the shot. He and Eagle ran bent low under the spinning blades, threw their gear into the aircraft, and climbed aboard. As the helicopter lifted off, Marcus watched the Afghan mountains fall away below them, knowing it might be the last time he saw them as an active duty SEAL.
The flight back to Bagram Airfield was tense and silent.
The crew chief, a weathered sergeant who'd seen plenty of operations go sideways, gave them water and energy bars but didn't ask questions. Marcus appreciated the professionalism. Eagle stared out the window, lost in his own thoughts about what would happen next.
Marcus knew they'd be met by military police as soon as they landed.
Disobeying a direct order in a combat zone was serious business, regardless of the outcome. The fact that he'd eliminated a high-value target wouldn't matter to the officers who would be questioning him in a few hours. As they approached Bagram, Marcus could see vehicles lined up near the landing zone.
More than the usual security detail. Someone important was waiting for them.
The helicopter settled onto the tarmac with a gentle bump. Before the rotors had fully stopped, military police were approaching the aircraft.
A stern-faced MP sergeant climbed aboard.
Chief Petty Officer Riley, you're to come with us immediately.
Marcus nodded and gathered his gear.
As he prepared to step off the helicopter, Eagle grabbed his arm.
Ghost, whatever happens, you did the right thing.
Marcus squeezed his spotter's shoulder. Take care of yourself, Eagle.
The MPs escorted Marcus to a waiting Humvee.
The ride across the base was short but felt like an hour. Marcus had been through debriefings before, but this was different. This time, he wasn't just reporting on a mission. This time, he was the subject of an investigation. They pulled up in front of a nondescript building that Marcus recognized as the base's legal offices. Inside, he was led to a small conference room where 3 officers waited. Marcus recognized Colonel Mitchell, the man who had ordered him to stand down. The other 2 were unfamiliar, but their rank insignia identified them as Lieutenant Colonel and Major.
Chief Petty Officer Riley, Colonel Mitchell began without preamble, you are under investigation for willful disobedience of a direct order in a combat zone.
You have the right to remain silent and the right to legal counsel.
Do you understand these rights?
Yes, sir.
Do you wish to waive your right to counsel at this time?
Marcus had been expecting this moment since he pulled the trigger. He'd thought about what he would say, how he would explain his actions. But, sitting in this sterile room, facing men who had never held a rifle in anger, he realized that no explanation would matter to them. I'd like to speak with a lawyer, sir. Colonel Mitchell's expression didn't change.
Very well. You'll be confined to quarters pending a full investigation.
Your security clearance is suspended effective immediately, and you're restricted from the base armory and communications equipment. Sir, I'd like to know the status of my spotter, Petty Officer Morrison.
Petty Officer Morrison is not under investigation at this time.
His statements indicate he followed proper procedures and attempted to dissuade you from engaging the target. Marcus felt relief wash over him.
Eagle would be fine.
That mattered more than whatever happened to his own career.
You're dismissed, Chief. An MP escort will take you to your quarters.
As Marcus was led from the building, he caught sight of a familiar figure approaching the legal offices.
Commander Sarah Chen, his operations officer, was walking quickly toward the entrance with a thick folder under her arm.
She saw Marcus and their eyes met for a brief moment before the MPs guided him toward the waiting vehicle. Back in his quarters, Marcus stripped off his gear and sat on his bunk.
The room felt strange after spending the morning in the Afghan mountains.
Too clean, too quiet, too safe. He thought about Rahman Hassan, about the truck rolling over in a cloud of dust.
24 coalition soldiers could rest easier now.
Their families would never know that their killers had been eliminated by a sniper who chose duty over orders.
A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts.
Marcus opened it to find a young Navy lawyer, Lieutenant Commander Jessica Torres, standing in the hallway with a briefcase.
"Chief Riley? I'm your assigned defense counsel. May I come in?" Marcus stepped aside and let her enter.
Torres was younger than he'd expected, maybe 30 years old, with sharp eyes and confident bearing that suggested she knew her business. "I've reviewed the initial charges," she began, setting her briefcase on the small table. "Willful disobedience of orders, conduct unbecoming, and violation of rules of engagement. The convening authority is considering whether to proceed with a court-martial."
"What's the worst-case scenario?"
"If convicted on all charges, you could face dismissal from service, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, and up to 10 years in military prison."
Marcus nodded.
He'd known the stakes when he made his choice.
"What's the best case?"
"That depends on several factors.
The target you eliminated was a legitimate military objective.
Your original rules of engagement authorized lethal force upon positive identification. The question is whether the subsequent stand-down order was lawful and whether you had sufficient justification to disobey it." Torres opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder.
"I need to understand exactly what happened out there. Walk me through the entire operation from the beginning."
For the next 2 hours, Marcus recounted every detail of the mission. Torres took careful notes, asking specific questions about communication protocols, chain of command, and the circumstances surrounding the stand-down order. "Tell me about this Colonel Mitchell," she said.
"Had you worked with him before?" "No, ma'am. First time I'd heard his voice was when he ordered me to stand down." "And your normal operational chain of command?" "Commander Chin was running tactical operations.
She'd been our point of contact throughout the mission."
Torres made another note. "What was your assessment of the friendly forces Colonel Mitchell mentioned?"
"My spotter and I conducted thorough reconnaissance of the target area. We observed no friendly forces within 2 miles of the compound.
The area had been cleared for our operation. So in your professional opinion, the intelligence about friendly forces in the area was inaccurate?"
Marcus considered his words carefully. "In my professional opinion, there were no friendly forces in the immediate target area at the time I engaged." Torres closed her notebook and leaned back in her chair.
"Chief, I'm going to be direct with you. This case isn't just about military discipline. It's about politics. Rahman Hassan was on several government watch lists.
His death is going to be celebrated in some quarters and criticized in others. The way this plays out will depend partly on which narrative wins."
"What do you mean?"
"If you're portrayed as a rogue operator who ignored orders and endangered a complex intelligence operation, you'll face the full weight of military justice. If you're seen as a dedicated warrior who made a split-second decision to eliminate a legitimate threat, the outcome could be very different."
Marcus understood.
His fate would be decided not just by the facts of the case, but by how those facts were presented to the convening authority. Over the next 3 days, Marcus remained confined to quarters while Torres gathered evidence and interviewed witnesses.
Eagle visited once, bringing news from their SEAL team.
"The guys are behind you 100%, Eagle reported. Master Chief says what you did took guts and saved lives."
"What about the official reaction?"
"Mixed. Naval Special Warfare Command is staying quiet while the investigation continues. But word is getting around that Hassan was planning something big. Intel found bomb-making materials and target lists at the compound after the operation." That was news to Marcus.
"Target lists?"
"Schools, markets, a medical clinic.
The guy was planning to kill a lot of innocent people."
Marcus felt a grim satisfaction. His decision to take the shot had prevented more than just one terrorist's escape. It had stopped a planned massacre. On the fourth day, Torres returned with significant developments.
"I've been busy," she announced, spreading documents across the table. "First, I spoke with Commander Chen.
Her testimony supports your version of events. She confirms that your original rules of engagement authorize lethal force and that she never received official notification about friendly forces in the area." Marcus felt cautiously optimistic.
"Second, I obtained communication logs from the Tactical Operations Center.
There's a gap in official radio traffic during the time Colonel Mitchell issued his stand-down order. The communication appears to have come through unofficial channels."
"What does that mean?" "It means Colonel Mitchell may have overstepped his authority. Normal protocol requires all operational commands to go through the established chain of command. Commander Chen should have been the one to issue any changes to your rules of engagement." Torres pulled out another document.
Third, and this is the big one, intelligence analysis of the material recovered from the compound confirms that Hassan was planning coordinated attacks against civilian targets within 72 hours.
Marcus leaned forward. 72 hours? Schools, a hospital, 2 markets. Estimated casualties in the hundreds.
The attack plans were found in the building where Hassan was hiding.
Your shot didn't just eliminate a bomb maker, it prevented a massacre. Marcus felt the weight of confirmation.
His instincts had been right. Every minute they'd waited for political clearance had brought Hassan closer to launching attacks that would have killed innocent people.
What happens now?
Now we prepare for a hearing. The convening authority has agreed to an Article 32 investigation before deciding whether to proceed with a court-martial.
It's essentially a preliminary hearing where we can present evidence and testimony. And if they decide to proceed with a court-martial? We fight. We have a strong case for justification based on the imminent threat Hassan represented.
Military law recognizes that soldiers sometimes face situations where following orders would result in greater harm than disobeying them.
Marcus nodded.
He'd known when he pulled the trigger that he was risking his career. Now he had to trust that the military justice system would recognize the difference between insubordination and moral courage. 2 weeks later, the Article 32 hearing convened in a conference room at Bagram Airfield. The investigating officer was Lieutenant Colonel Williams, a career military lawyer with a reputation for fairness.
Present were Torres as defense counsel, Major Harrison as the prosecution, and Colonel Mitchell as a key witness. The prosecution presented their case methodically.
They emphasized the importance of military discipline, the chain of command, and the dangerous precedent set by soldiers who ignored direct orders. Major Harrison painted Marcus as a rogue operator whose actions, regardless of outcome, threatened the foundation of military order. Members of the armed forces cannot be permitted to pick and choose which orders to follow, Harrison argued.
Chief Petty Officer Riley's actions, however, well-intentioned, represent a fundamental breakdown in military discipline.
Torres countered with evidence about the imminent threat Hassan represented, the communication breakdown that led to Colonel Mitchell's unauthorized intervention, and the lives saved by Marcus's actions.
Chief Riley faced an impossible choice, she argued.
Follow orders and allow a known terrorist to escape and kill hundreds of innocent people, or take action to prevent a massacre. He chose to save lives, and, for that decision, he should be commended, not prosecuted. Commander Chen testified about the operational chain of command and confirmed that she had never been informed about friendly forces in the area. Her testimony undermined the prosecution's claim that Marcus had ignored legitimate tactical concerns. Eagle testified about Marcus's character and professionalism, describing years of exemplary service and countless missions where Marcus had followed orders even under extreme circumstances. But the most dramatic moment came when Colonel Mitchell took the witness stand.
Under Torres's cross-examination, Mitchell admitted that he had not gone through normal channels when issuing the stand-down order.
He acknowledged that Commander Chen was the designated tactical commander and that his intervention had bypassed established protocols.
Colonel Mitchell, Torres pressed, what was your specific authority to override the established chain of command in this situation?
Mitchell shifted uncomfortably. I was acting on behalf of higher headquarters based on intelligence that friendly forces might be in the area.
What intelligence specifically? That information is classified.
Colonel, this is a military hearing investigating serious charges against Chief Petty Officer Riley. If classified intelligence justified your actions, we need to understand what that intelligence was.
Mitchell looked toward the prosecution table before answering.
The intelligence was unconfirmed. There were reports of possible friendly units in the general area, but their exact location was unknown.
So you ordered a proven sniper to stand down and allow a high-value target to escape based on unconfirmed reports? I was exercising appropriate caution.
Colonel, are you aware that intelligence recovered from the target compound revealed planned attacks against civilian targets that would have occurred within 72 hours?
Mitchell's face flushed.
That intelligence wasn't available at the time I made my decision. But it confirms that Chief Riley's assessment was correct.
Rahman Hassan represented an imminent threat to innocent lives, and any delay in eliminating him would have resulted in mass casualties.
The hearing concluded with closing arguments. Major Harrison emphasized the importance of military discipline and the dangerous precedent of allowing soldiers to ignore direct orders. Torres focused on Marcus's moral courage and the lives saved by his actions.
Lieutenant Colonel Williams retired to consider his recommendation.
Marcus waited in his quarters, knowing that his military career hung in the balance. 3 days later, Lieutenant Colonel Williams called all parties back to the conference room to announce his findings. Marcus sat beside Torres, trying to read the investigating officer's expression for any hint of what was coming. Williams was a professional who kept his emotions hidden, but Marcus had learned to read people during his years in special operations. After careful consideration of all testimony and evidence presented, Williams began, I find that Chief Petty Officer Riley's actions, while technically constituting disobedience of a direct order, were justified by extraordinary circumstances. Marcus felt his shoulders relax slightly, but Williams wasn't finished. The evidence clearly shows that the subject, Rahman Hassan, represented an imminent threat to civilian lives. Intelligence recovered from the target compound confirms that planned attacks would have resulted in mass casualties within 72 hours.
Chief Riley's actions prevented this massacre. Williams looked directly at Marcus.
Furthermore, the evidence indicates significant irregularities in the command structure during this operation. Colonel Mitchell's intervention bypassed established protocols and created confusion in the operational chain of command. Colonel Mitchell's face was stone, but Marcus could see the anger in his eyes. Therefore, Williams continued, I recommend that no court-martial proceedings be initiated against Chief Petty Officer Riley. However, I do recommend that he receive formal counseling regarding the proper channels for addressing concerns about operational orders.
Torres squeezed Marcus's arm under the table.
It wasn't a complete vindication, but it was far better than the alternative.
Major Harrison stood immediately.
Sir, the prosecution respectfully disagrees with this recommendation.
The precedent this sets could undermine military discipline across all services. Your disagreement is noted, Major.
The recommendation will be forwarded to the convening authority for final decision. As the hearing concluded, Marcus felt a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty. The investigating officer had sided with him, but the final decision still lay with higher command.
Politics could still override justice.
Colonel Mitchell approached as Marcus and Torres gathered their materials. Chief Riley, Mitchell said, his voice tight with controlled anger, you may have won this battle, but your career in the Navy is finished.
I'll make sure of that. Marcus looked at the colonel calmly.
Sir, with respect, my career was finished the moment I decided to save innocent lives instead of following your order. I made my peace with that choice. Mitchell turned and walked away without another word.
Torres pulled Marcus aside as they left the building. The colonel's right about one thing.
Even if the convening authority accepts Williams's recommendation, your career will be difficult from here. You'll always be known as the SEAL who disobeyed orders.
I understand that, ma'am.
But I can live with that reputation a lot easier than I could live with knowing I let Rahman Hassan escape. 2 weeks passed before the convening authority's decision came down. Marcus spent the time training with his team, maintaining his skills while waiting for word on his future. The other SEALs treated him normally, but he could sense the underlying tension. Everyone knew that his case would set a precedent for how the military handled similar situations in the future. Commander Sarachin visited him during this waiting period, bringing unofficial word from higher headquarters. The intelligence community is very pleased with the Hassan operation, she reported. Analysis of the recovered materials has disrupted 3 separate terror networks.
You probably saved hundreds of lives. What about the official reaction?
Mixed. Naval Special Warfare Command appreciates the tactical success, but they're concerned about the discipline implications. No one wants to encourage operators to start ignoring orders.
Marcus nodded.
He understood the complexity of his situation. The military couldn't officially condone disobedience, even when that disobedience achieved important objectives.
There's something else, Chen continued. You're being considered for the Navy Cross. Marcus was stunned. The Navy Cross was the service's second highest decoration, awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. Ma'am, I disobeyed a direct order. How can they consider me for a medal?
Because you also eliminated a high-value target and prevented a terrorist attack. Your actions were simultaneously insubordinate and heroic. The Pentagon is trying to figure out how to handle that contradiction. The answer came 3 days later when Marcus was called to report to the base commander's office. Brigadier General Patricia Hayes, a career Marine officer who commanded all coalition forces in the region, was waiting for him along with Torres and several other officers Marcus didn't recognize. Chief Petty Officer Riley, General Hayes began, the convening authority has accepted Lieutenant Colonel Williams's recommendation.
No court-martial will be convened.
However, you will receive a letter of counseling in your personnel file regarding proper channels for addressing operational concerns. Marcus felt relief wash over him, but General Hayes continued. Additionally, you are being awarded the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism in the face of the enemy. Your actions directly prevented terrorist attacks that would have resulted in significant civilian casualties. The contradiction wasn't lost on Marcus. He was being simultaneously punished and decorated for the same action. Sir, I appreciate the honor, but I'm not sure I deserve a medal for disobeying orders. General Hayes smiled slightly. Chief, you're not receiving this medal for disobedience. You're receiving it for making an impossible moral choice under extreme pressure and choosing to save innocent lives. That's the definition of heroism. The ceremony was small and private, held in General Hayes's office with only Torres, Commander Chen, and a photographer present. As the general pinned the Navy Cross to Marcus's uniform, she spoke quietly. Chief, this medal comes with an understanding. Your actions were necessary and heroic, but they cannot become a model for others.
Military discipline depends on soldiers following orders, even when they disagree with them. Your situation was unique and extraordinary. Marcus understood.
He was being honored and warned at the same time. After the ceremony, Commander Chen took Marcus aside for a private conversation.
Ghost, I need to talk to you about your future in the teams.
Marcus had been expecting this conversation.
Ma'am, I know my career options are limited now. Actually, that's not entirely true.
Naval Special Warfare Command has an unusual assignment for you. There's a new training program being developed for advanced marksmanship instructors. They want someone with your skills and experience to help design the curriculum.
Teaching? Training the next generation of SEAL snipers. Passing on your knowledge and experience.
It's an important job, Ghost.
Marcus considered the offer.
After 12 years in combat operations, the idea of training young SEALs had appeal. He could help ensure that the next generation was better prepared for the impossible choices they might face.
Where would this assignment be? Coronado, California. Naval Amphibious Base.
You'd work with the best marksmen in the Navy, developing training programs that could save lives in future operations.
California.
Real beds, hot showers, and no one shooting at him.
After 8 combat deployments, the idea of a stateside assignment was attractive. "I'm interested, ma'am." "Good. There's one more thing.
The program director specifically requested you because of your reputation for making difficult decisions under pressure. They want instructors who understand that marksmanship isn't just about hitting targets.
It's about making the right choice in the moment when everything is on the line."
3 weeks later, Marcus found himself on a plane to California, leaving Afghanistan behind for what he knew would be the last time. Eagle accompanied him to the airfield.
"You sure about this teaching gig?" Eagle asked as they waited for the transport. "It's time for something different. I've done my share of pulling triggers. Maybe now I can help others learn when to pull theirs." "You going to teach them about disobeying orders?" Marcus smiled. "I'm going to teach them about making moral choices under pressure. Sometimes those are the same thing."
The flight to California gave Marcus time to reflect on everything that had happened. He thought about Rahman Hassan, about the 24 coalition soldiers the bomb maker had killed, about the hundreds of civilians who had been spared because of a single rifle shot. He thought about Colonel Mitchell and the political pressures that sometimes prevented good soldiers from doing their jobs. He thought about Commander Chen and Lieutenant Colonel Williams, officers who had stood up for what was right even when it was difficult. Most of all, he thought about the choice he'd made in those crucial seconds when Hassan was escaping. Given the same situation again, Marcus knew he would make the same decision.
Some things were more important than following orders. Some choices define not just a career, but a man's character.
The Naval Amphibious Base at Coronado was a stark contrast to the Afghan mountains. Palm trees instead of rocks, ocean instead of desert, new recruits instead of hardened veterans. Marcus's first day as an instructor felt strange after years of combat operations. His students were young SEALs and Navy marksmen, eager to learn from someone with his reputation. But Marcus quickly realized that teaching marksmanship was about more than ballistics and wind calculation. "Anybody can learn to hit a target at 1,000 meters, he told his first class. What makes the difference between a good sniper and a great one isn't just accuracy.
It's judgment.
Knowing when to take the shot and when to hold fire. Understanding that every round you fire has consequences that extend far beyond the target." One young SEAL raised his hand.
"Chief, what do you do if you disagree with your orders?"
Marcus had been expecting this question. His story had spread throughout the special operations community, and everyone wanted to know how he'd made his decision.
"You follow proper channels first," Marcus replied.
"You talk to your immediate superior, express your concerns, try to work within the system. But, sometimes, in combat, there isn't time for proper channels.
Sometimes you have to choose between following orders and saving lives. How do you make that choice?" Marcus thought for a moment. "You ask yourself one question: can you live with the consequences of your action or inaction? If innocent people die because you followed orders, can you live with that? If your career ends because you disobeyed orders to save lives, can you live with that?"
The classroom was silent. These young warriors were wrestling with concepts that went far beyond marksmanship training. "The hardest part of being a sniper isn't making difficult shots," Marcus continued.
"It's making difficult decisions. The rifle is just a tool.
Your judgment, your moral courage, your willingness to accept responsibility for your actions, that's what makes you effective." Over the following months, Marcus developed a training program that emphasized decision-making as much as marksmanship. He created scenarios where students had to make split-second choices about engaging targets, dealing with civilian threats, and operating under conflicting orders.
The program gained attention throughout Naval Special Warfare Command.
Marcus's approach to training, emphasizing moral courage alongside tactical skills, was seen as innovative and necessary.
Young SEALs graduating from his program were better prepared for the complex realities of modern warfare.
A year after arriving at Coronado, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. Eagle had completed his deployment rotation and was assigned to the same base. "Heard you're making quite a name for yourself as an instructor," Eagle said as they walked along the beach near the base. "It's different from combat, but important work.
These kids need to understand what they're getting into.
Speaking of which, I heard some interesting news about our friend Colonel Mitchell.
Marcus raised an eyebrow.
Turns out he was under investigation by the Pentagon Inspector General for unauthorized interference in combat operations. Apparently, our situation wasn't the first time he'd overstepped his authority.
What happened to him? Forced retirement. Seems his political ambitions got ahead of his military judgment one too many times.
Marcus felt a certain satisfaction at the news, but also sadness. Mitchell had been wrong, but he'd also been a career officer whose service had ended in disgrace.
What about the bigger picture? Marcus asked. Any changes in how they handle these situations? Actually, yes. There's new guidance being developed about operational command authority. Basically, they're trying to prevent what happened to us from happening to other teams. Clear chain of command, defined authorization levels, better communication protocols. Marcus nodded. Sometimes good outcomes emerged from bad situations.
His case had highlighted weaknesses in the system that needed to be addressed. 2 years into his teaching assignment, Marcus was promoted to Senior Chief Petty Officer. The promotion ceremony was attended by many of the young SEALs he'd trained, along with Commander Chen and other officers who had supported him during his legal troubles. In his acceptance speech, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. 2 years ago, I made a decision that could have ended my career. I chose to take a shot that saved innocent lives but violated direct orders. I was prepared to face the consequences of that choice because some things are more important than personal advancement. He looked out at the assembled SEALs, many of them preparing for their first combat deployments. Today, I'm honored to continue serving in a different capacity. Teaching the next generation of naval special warfare operators is as important as any combat mission I've ever been on. Every SEAL I train who makes good decisions in combat, who shows moral courage under pressure, who saves innocent lives, that's a victory that matters. After the ceremony, Marcus received a message that surprised him. It was from the family of one of the coalition soldiers who had been killed by Rahman Hassan's bombs. They had learned about Marcus's role in eliminating the bomb maker and wanted to thank him. The message was simple but powerful. Thank you for making sure our son's killer could never hurt anyone else. We know you risked everything to do what was right. That evening, Marcus walked alone along the beach, thinking about the path his life had taken. The Afghan mountains seemed very far away from the California coast, but the lessons learned there remained close to his heart. He thought about the young SEALs he was training, about the impossible choices they might face in future conflicts. He hoped that his teaching would help them navigate those choices with wisdom and courage. The medal case in his quarters contained the Navy Cross alongside other decorations from 12 years of service. But Marcus knew that his real legacy wasn't in the medals or commendations. It was in the lives he'd saved, the students he'd trained, and the example he'd set for making difficult decisions under pressure. 6 months later, Marcus received orders for his next assignment. He was being transferred to the Pentagon to help develop new rules of engagement for special operations forces. The military had recognized that modern warfare required more nuanced approaches to command authority and tactical decision-making. His final day at the training center was marked by a ceremony where his students presented him with a custom rifle scope engraved with a simple message, in memory of the impossible shot that saved hundreds of lives. As Marcus packed his gear for the move to Washington, he reflected on how much his life had changed since that moment in the Afghan mountains. He'd gone from being a combat operator to an educator to a policy developer. Each role had built on the experiences of the previous one. The young SEAL who had asked about disobeying orders approached him as he was leaving the building. "Chief, I wanted to thank you for everything you taught us. But I have one more question." "What's that?" "Do you ever regret taking that shot?" Marcus smiled. "Not for a second. I regret that the situation put me in a position where I had to choose between following orders and saving lives. But I'll never regret choosing to save lives." "What if you had missed?" "Then, I would have faced court-martial for disobeying orders and failing in my mission. But I didn't miss. That's what 12 years of training was for, to make sure that when the moment came, I was ready." The young SEAL nodded and walked away, probably thinking about the choices he might face in his own career. Marcus climbed into his car and drove away from the Naval Amphibious Base, heading toward his new assignment and the next phase of his service. In his rearview mirror, he could see young SEALs training on the ranges where he'd spent the last 2 years teaching them about more than just marksmanship. The myth of the SEAL sniper who disobeyed orders to save innocent lives had become something larger, a lesson about moral courage, about making difficult decisions under pressure, about the responsibility that comes with the power to take life or preserve it. Marcus Riley, the ghost of the Afghan mountains, had found a new mission. And, like every mission before it, he was determined to make it count.